Audience, now it's time for the final main plenary session of the FSC 2020 conference, and what a way to end. Jase Te Patu is an award-winning wellbeing advocate and founder of M3 Mindfulness for Children. M3 has impacted nearly 10,000 children over the last 2.5 years. Jase and his trainers have been to 200 pre and primary schools throughout New Zealand. The program uses Māori storytelling and movement to teach school children simple mindfulness tools like breath and visualisation. M3 Mindfulness for Children aims to create a nation of holistically well humans. This approach is designed to tackle New Zealand's challenges with mental health and suicide. As we have heard over the past few days, protecting the next generation's mental health is something where we collectively must focus more on, and it is a pleasure to welcome Jase to speak more on this vision. But first, a word from our session sponsor, Justin Fox, General Manager, Private Wealth, Trustees Executors.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Fox and I'm from Trustees Executors. It is with great pleasure to introduce Jase Te Patu to you today. Before he discovered yoga, Jase was a performer in musicals such as The Lion King, Jersey Boys and Miss Saigon Australian tours. He also trains Les Mills group fitness instructors around the world. Jase is a co-owner of Afi Yoga and Wellbeing, founder of M3 Mindfulness for Children. M3 encompasses mindfulness movement and Māori stories in the series of videos and live sessions taught to over 10,000 primary school and early childhood age children throughout New Zealand. Jase has received many awards for his work, particularly in the mental health and wellbeing space. As a speaker, the mindfulness and mental health sector is the perfect space for Jase to share his wide and varied skill set with children and adults alike. We at Trustees Executors care deeply about the mental wellbeing of our staff, and during the lockdown period, this is one of our major considerations. In the last 5 to 10 years, New Zealand and around the world has made great bounds in breaking down the stigma of mental health issues and giving us the ability and freedom to talk about them. Therefore, this presentation will be great viewing and comes with a warning that you may need your tissues. So without further ado, I give you Jase Te Patu. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Justin. And here, streaming from Wellington, we have Jase. Welcome to the FSC conference, and over to you. Kia ora, Jase.
Kia ora. Tuhia ki te rangi, tuhia ki te whenua, tuhia ki te ngā kau o ngā tangata katoa. Hia hate me nui, ko te aroha. Write it in the sky, write it on the earth, write in the hearts of every single person. The most important thing is love. Me wehi ki te atua, ko te tīmatanga o te whakaro kotahi. Kei ngā mate, huhua o te wā. Haere atu rā koutou, haere atu rā koutou ki te huinga o te kahurangi o ti atu ai. Ko papatua nuku e tā koto nei. Ko rangi nui e tui honei, tēnā korua. E koa ngā titoa rangatira, e koa te atiawa o Taranaki, e tahi o ngā iwi o tēnei rohi, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kei aku nui, kei aku rahi, tēnā koutou katoa e rā mene mai nei I runga I te whakaro kotahi. Ko wai tēnei. He uri tēnei no Ngāti Apa, no Ngāti Ruanui, no Ngāti Tūwhare tua hoki, ko Jase Te Patu tāko ingoa. Good morning, everybody. Kia ora. My name's Jase Te Patu, and thank you for the introduction and also the privilege, the honour of being here to close out the FSC conference. I don't take this lightly. It's a real honor to be able to speak about the mahi that I do. And my hope is that as I share from my heart this morning, it leaves the time that you've had together, it leaves you perhaps uplifted, empowered, and maybe inspired to do better in the world. And gosh knows we really need that at the moment with what's going on with elections, not just here, but globally, and the current situation with COVID. So I promise you won't hear anything about COVID, and you won't hear anything about the election for the next 30 minutes or so. So let me share my story with you, please. I was born 46 years ago in Whanganui. Don't worry, it's not my whole story. It's just snippets. I was whanga by my grandparents, and it was a wonderful upbringing. What we lacked in money was certainly made up with love. I was brought up with my little brother, and the first thing I remember when I was 2, my very first childhood memory was seeing my father standing at the door, getting ready to leave. And it was the 70s, so, you know, some questionable fashion choices. I remember his moustache, it was a handlebar moustache. For some reason, he had a mullet. I don't know how that fit into the 70s. And flared trousers. And I remember he had a red bag that seared into my memory. And my dad, that day, why I remember this so profoundly is that he left and he never came back. And as you grow older as a child and you learn that your dad has left and essentially abandoned you and your brother, and when you learn that he's gone on to have another family and adopted children of another woman who he's now seeing, it sparks a sense of belief in yourself that you're not worthy, yes, of abandonment, of not enoughness. And I share this story because lots of things can happen early on in our lives, some huge, some small, that impact us. And I would say and acknowledge that that was the first thing in my life that definitely impacted the trajectory of it. And so I held on to that not worthiness and my dislike for my dad as poison. I held on to that, and throughout my whole life until I was about 40, so 6 years ago, I realized that my hatred for my dad needed to be healed. And I hadn't given him a chance to speak his truth and what was going on for him at that time. Good news about this story is that my dad and I now have a really healthy and beautiful relationship. But the most important piece of the story is that it's interesting that the same traumatic experience can happen to siblings. The same experience happened to my brother. He too held on to the hatred of our dad as poison. And when we do that, when we hold on to poison, when we stuff down our emotions, it can manifest, that mamai or that hurt in our heart can manifest into an unstable mind. It can affect us physically, manifest in us physically. And with my brother, it manifested as weight and diabetes and health issues. And unfortunately, 2 years ago, almost to this day, my little brother passed away. And I shared this story, and it's been an experience of sharing this story quite a lot so that I can get to the point without crying. I share this story because there is huge cost in us holding on to stuff, holding on to regret, holding on to hate, holding on to grudges, and not healing from that. that, as you've just heard, can have a huge impact on our lives. Emotionally, of course. Mentally, yes. But then also physically. And unfortunately, my brother paid the ultimate cost of not healing from his mamai in his heart or the chatter in his mind. So that, you see, as our dad was not there for us at the beginning of our lives, he's effectively now repeated that same cycle for his 8 children, because now he's no longer there for them. And what would it be like if our children of Aotearoa had some really simple tools to be able to navigate their way through their emotions at a young age? And on the scheme of things traumatic that happen to children, Dad leaving isn't actually that bad, but it definitely impacted my life and, as you've heard, impacted my brothers. But what about if our children had some tools to be able to deal with their emotions at a young age, so that when things come up, they're not stuffing the emotions down and holding on to it as baggage to unpack as adults and work through and heal, which sometimes can end up too late to do. But what about if they were able to do it as children, to have some tools in their kit so that they're carrying those tools and using them throughout their life, so that, and this is feeding into what was said in my bio, so that they're not adding to the statistics of our rising youth suicide. So they're not adding to the statistics of our male suicide once they get to adulthood and don't know how to cope. I wonder if you know that since 2006, the use of antidepressant and anxiety medicine in children has risen by 80%. That's here in Aotearoa. That just blows my mind. It blows my mind because I didn't even know that children could have medicine for anxiety and antidepressant. And this is starting for as early as 3 years old. And it's rising, the use of it. And I shared this in my TED talk. What about if our children, instead of having to reach for pills, and I'm definitely not condoning the use of medicine, because sometimes it's needed for sure. But what about if our children learnt tools, like they learned how to do maths, like they learned how to count, like they learned how to speak English, like they learned how to sing the alphabet? What about if they learnt some coping mechanisms to self-regulate their emotions, so that ultimately they're happier, they're more present, they're kinder, more loving human beings, and they grow up to have a meaningful, purposeful, happy life? Now, I'm under no illusion that currently the world and the state of the world, especially right now, I'm not going to say the word because I promise, but post what's gone on this year, I'm under no illusion that there are massive challenges, not just for our children, but for everyone. But if we were to start teaching our children from a young age these tools to be able to cope, then they would show up in the world as adults, as youth, as they're growing up. Yes, kinder. Yes, loving. A generation of leaders that are making wiser choices for us as a community, or on a macro level as a country. And so, inspired, I suppose, by those statistics around the use of antidepressant and anxiety medicine, activated by the passing of my brother, supported by the tools that I've had of, I didn't share this, but there's so much in so short a time to explain everything that I've done in my life. But I've had a practice of meditation and yoga for the last 18 years. It saved my life. I also come with, and adding on to what's motivating my why in my life, is I have had now 5 of my own personal friends pass of suicide. And one of them only a year ago, who I know some of you might know. And so with my tools and my kit that I have had that have saved my life through owning a yoga studio and sharing the tools of yoga and of meditation and of mindfulness with adults, I was motivated to create M3 Mindfulness for Children. And as you heard in my intro, there's 3 components to M3. The first M is Māori stories. Our Māori pūrākau, our Māori stories have such beautiful themes of respect, themes of love, themes of whakapapa or understanding where you come from, themes of going slow, themes of hariko or happiness, or more recently, Matariki speaks about the theme of kaitiakitanga, where the 9 stars come down to take care of Papa Tuanuku. Key learning from that for me is taking care or guardianship of not just Earth Mother, but each other, our whānau, our families, but most importantly, ourselves. So teaching our children our Māori stories, because we have such a diverse range of cultures living here in Aotearoa at the moment, allows for our children to have a sense of whanaungatanga or belonging here to Aotearoa. The movement, or the second M of M3, the movement is slow, mindful movement, yes, borrowed from the teachings of yoga and my background and my practice, to somatize the stories. So we're telling a story, say, of Maui, and our legs are building strength as we pretend that we're slowing the sun or fishing up the North Island. And it's beautiful and crack up to watch the children who get so much joy in moving their bodies to a story, rather than just have a story read to them and sitting there like this, engaged or maybe even disengaged. But the heart of this program, really, the third M of M3, is mindfulness. I wonder if right now I asked you to put everything down, put your feet on the ground, relax your arms, and you don't need to close your eyes. But if you could just fully focus on 5 of your breaths right now, in and out. Keep going. And notice how the mind is going to want to distract you away, maybe to what you've got coming up this afternoon, or maybe to the past. And just notice how you feel after just 5, maybe undistracted, mindful breaths. Do you feel a little bit more settled or calm or relaxed now? Less in your head and more present in this moment? And that's really, like I say, the heart of our M3 program, is teaching our children to be more present, because we tend to, humans, be in the past, hanging out in the past, like me and my brother did, hanging out in the hurt that our dad had caused to us, leaving us at a young age. Or we hang out in the future, projecting into the future, anxious about the results of something, anxious about a deadline, anxious about getting something over the line. So a really simple way to say that is we spend a lot of unnecessary energy in the past, which at its extreme can escalate to depression, or the future, which at its extreme can escalate to anxiety. But what about if we taught our children, like I said, like maths, like the alphabet, to be more present now, in the moment, through simple techniques like the breath that you guys just did, that can bring you here now, so that they can be with their emotions, so they can feel their emotions, so that they can name what their emotions are and not run away from them if they're negative, but be with it. Learn to be with it so that it dissipates, and then they can carry on next step in life. And so my hope with the M3 program is to bring a program that uses really inherently te whare tapawha, a well-being holistic program, yes, with the lens of mindfulness. So with the Māori stories, there's whanaungatanga. With movement, there's tinana. So you've got social well-being and you've got physical well-being. And then you have, with mindfulness, you have wairua or emotional regulation, and then also hinengaro or mind, settling the mind. And my hope is that this program will be used in our schools to be able to teach our children some tools that will help them with their well-being. And here's the key too, to sustain them. I know that's one of the themes, well-being and sustainability are the themes of this conference, so that our children can have tools that will keep them well and sustain them through their life, so that they're emotionally not on a roller coaster all their way through their lives, but are like this. That's my hope. And when we're like this, we all know, when our mind is settled, when our mind is clear, our decision-making is on point. And you as business people know more than ever how key decisions must be made with a clear mind. And if I could encourage us all to do these practices, and that's my hope, if I could encourage us all to do these practices, simple, stop when your heart is feeling anxious and you need a break. Take 5 breaths, really simple. Give yourself some space so your decision-making is clear. I wanted to share some really beautiful pieces that have come from this work in M3. Yes, I own a yoga studio here in Wellington, and that's been my full-time job. But what I've realized through being in early childhoods, that's where the program is right now, and primary schools, is that the work is much, much needed. And there's only one of me, was only one of me up until 6 months ago. I now have 4 trainers out there in the schools live. M3 is available as a resource, videos online, so the teachers can play them in the classroom if they can't get one of our teachers live at their schools or centres. So next year, 2021, I'm going full-time with this work. I'm going to train more people, so job opportunities. I'm bringing forward our youth as well. I've got a project with Te Puni Kōkiri where we go into schools, secondary schools, and we teach our secondary school children, o rangatahi, this program, M3. And then it's a tuakana taina relationship where they go into early childhood centres and primary schools eventually and share the knowledge they know and teach the children, the younger children, this work. So it's not me, an old guy, standing there going, you should do this, you should breathe like this. But it's been taught from our youth. And I'm really looking forward to that mahi. Because at the end of it too, those schools that participate in this program will get a wraparound program where I am, and last piece before I kind of wrap up, a wraparound program where I'm collaborating with a global mindfulness company, foundation called the Contentment Foundation. They're already in 20 countries around the world. It's evidence-based, run by a CEO who's a psychology professor, formerly from Yale. It's an evidence-based program that's a program for all of the ages on the education pathway, so from 0 to 18 years. It's not just for the children, but it's for the teachers first, because what I know about education is that if children learn things and they go home or their teacher's not role modeling it, it doesn't stick. So the teachers do the program, then the children, and here's the piece that I love, is that the parents get the program as well. So it's for the whole school and centre ecosystem. I'm joining forces M3, my resources and my team, so that we can work together to bring a holistic wellbeing program to our schools. And there's a really beautiful opportunity while I have a captive audience for if you have a philanthropic arm to sponsor a school with this work, and it will be starting in 2021. Imagine a nation where not just our children are well emotionally, mentally, physically, but also socially. Imagine a nation where our teachers are feeling the same, not burnt out, not overworked. They have some tools in their kit so that they are well and showing up for our children to educate them. And then, this is my exciting piece, what about if our parents, you parents, have some tools to be able to deal with your own emotional, mental, physical, and social well-being? What would it be like for us to all be well as a nation? What would it be like where we don't have suicide statistics skyrocketing at crisis level? What would it be like where diabetes isn't even a thing for my people especially? What would it be like where we're eating better, taking better care of ourselves, planting food in our gardens, living off the land like our ancestors used to do? What would it be like where we have CEOs and leaders who are making key decisions that will affect so many people with clearer minds and bigger hearts? At the beginning of my kōrero, I said, tuhia ki te rangi, tuhia ki te whenua, tuhia ki te ngākau o ngā tangata katoa. He aha te me nui ko te aroha. Write it in the sky, write it in the earth, write it in all the hearts of every single person. The most important thing is love. I hope from my little share, and there was so much that I could have shared with you today because I wanted to leave some time for question and answers. My hope is that you see my heart. My hope is that you understand that if we were to operate from a space of love for ourselves, taking better care of ourselves, love for our whānau, taking better care of our whānau, love for our communities, including our work communities, and love for our nation, love for our land. If we're able to operate from a space that's heart-driven, not just head-driven, which can confuse matters sometimes, but if we were able to operate from a heart-driven space, what amazing things could come from all of that possibility. Nō reira hoa mā ahakoa he iti te kupu, he nui te whakaaro. Even though my kōrero was short, it came with lots of knowledge and hopefully a little bit of wisdom in there that you found valuable. I'm getting a message that if you would like to ask any questions, oh yes, I've got them here. I've got some questions here in the chat. What do I wish I had known as a child? I wish someone had told me that what I think of myself is more important than what others think of me. It's taken me almost 46 years to care less what anyone thinks of me. And because of that practice, it's allowed me to become obviously more comfortable in my skin, a fuller, more integrated version of myself. So I'm even acknowledging all of the negative things, but acknowledging them as blessings and lessons that I can learn from to be better. Second question, has the world really changed in respect of prescription of antidepressants to children, or have we just got better about talking about things? Kia ora. Thank you. Even that you just asked that question means that we are better at talking about things, that you're willing to listen to me speaking about this. Yes. And we must continue the kōrero. People are heading the charge like Nigel Latta with his work in the children's space, like Mike King speaking about his own mental health challenges, is normalizing our kōrero, our willingness to speak when things aren't going so good. That mantra of it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. I have shit days too. I have a well-being buddy who I check in with, and we check in with each other every 2 days. Simple, how are you? I text either a green heart, which means I'm good, orange heart, which means maybe more questioning, and then a red heart means pick up the phone, I need to speak. Having tools in our kit is great, but sometimes we don't have enough and we need the scaffolding and the support of others outside of us. So having someone there to support us, to speak about our stuff and hold space for us to speak about it is super important. Some schools started talking about feelings after lockdown, but now seem to have stopped. What's your thoughts on how parents could keep the conversation going? I might answer this by using an example. I was at a school last week and, end of term 3, and a kid was crying. Long story short, I sat down. The teacher was trying to shush him, and I'm truly into the idea of connection before correction. So I sat down next to him and just sat next to him. And he cried, and I said, "Oh, it seems as though you're sad." He was like, "Yes," and he grabbed my hand and held my hand. I said, "Can you tell me in your words, why are you sad?" He would have been about 6. And he had the agency through me asking and inquiring a little more to speak about what was making him upset. And he said that it was because his friend who was sitting on the mat in front of him didn't let him sit next to him. I'd given them the space to speak about it openly. And then I said to him, "Why don't you tell him that?" And he did. And the other kid was like gobsmacked going, "I didn't mean that. Oh, I didn't say that. I said, sit next to me. So he misunderstood. And so that whole situation didn't escalate. It was diffused just with communication. Whanaungatanga. So I say, keep speaking to your children. Ask them in your words, how are you feeling? Where do you feel it? And then the next time they can identify that feeling in their body, their sensations, and through breath, maybe just like I taught you earlier, can be with the emotion until it settles. Just an idea tip maybe. Should schools be doing more to install mindfulness in our kids' schools? Yes. Short answer. Because mindfulness is, I didn't get to the definition, as being present, non-judgmentally in the moment. And like I said, how beneficial would it be for all of us to be less hanging out in the past and in the future and more present here in this life, eating this delicious life up, not missing a moment. And the breath, if there was a takeaway from mindfulness, the breath is such a simple tool to bring us right back here to the moment. And you can do it anywhere. You can do mindful breath anywhere. I do it on the bus sometimes. In your experience, why don't families already know how to raise their children to be connected to their feelings and be mindful? simple. Well, many contributing factors, but we live in a fast life. Everything is vying for our attention. Fake news, social media, the TV's on, the radio talkback's on, listening to what's going on in the political world at the moment. So there's so many distractions. With our children, I'm finding when I go into schools, so much expectation. You know, Billy's got rugby and then extracurricular activities after school and doesn't get home to maybe 7. There's so many things. And I got this question yesterday, is what can a family do together that could be mindful? And I remember being brought up, and take this or leave this, and please, I'm not trying to say this is how you should parent, but I share because it may resonate. I was brought up with everyone sits at the table and we eat dinner. And my nan, who brought me up, said to my grandfather, you will be home at 6 o'clock because that's when dinner is, and you will sit down, otherwise you won't get dinner. And I love that because it means tools down. No sitting at your computer at the table finishing that email. What's it like to just spend 15 minutes, half an hour with your family, fully present, engaging? Great question. And final question after this. How does your program cater to the individual personalities and social needs? We tailor-make the program for whatever school that we are going into. And I invite all of the teachers to speak to me about how we can help or support them more. I am definitely not a fixer. The program's not there to fix. The program is mainstream enough to also fit into kura kaupapa and kohanga reo and puna reo. So an example is, in one class I have an ADHD student, I have 2 students who are on the spectrum, and I have non-English speakers. So here you have issues with trying to relate the Māori story to people who don't even speak English, let alone Māori, and then have to deal with the ADHD students and the spectrum students. And the program is gentle enough that even if they can't explain it, I'm speaking about the spectrum students, they get it. They get really ultimately the whakatau, which means to settle at the end, when we all come together quietly and sit and breathe. They understand the kaupapa, even if they can't explain it with their own words. There's lots of power in non-verbals. There's lots of power in the energy that me as a facilitator comes with. And then, final question, if I could throw to our wonderful MC for today, I'll hand over to you so that we can kia oti te hui ngā.
Kia ora, Jase. Thank you so much for sharing what is a truly personal story. And, I guess as a parent of a preteen young woman, young girl, I guess, and I see all the social pressures and everything that she has. And sometimes I think lots of people have said that, they never saw a sign, or they didn't, before it was too late. I guess, in the work that you do, are there any messages, or is there sort of common themes that I guess you see in terms of children that are struggling, or what should we look out for, I guess, is my question.
I think there's a 2-part answer to that. And yeah, sometimes the signs aren't obvious. And so the first part is, are we paying attention? So as caregivers, as like even me, and my brother has passed, even me with my nephews and nieces, his children, am I paying attention to what I see of them posting on Facebook? You know, another way to say this, am I present to what's going on for them? Like, am I actually seeing signs? Because sometimes they can be really little, like stopping eating and I'm not coming to breakfast, or I'm not taking anything for lunch. That's an example. So there's that piece. And then the other one is without nagging, and that's a delicate balance and individual to our parents and caregivers, is asking the questions. How are you is general, yes, but what's going on for you is something which requires more of an answer. How are you? Simple answer could be good, and that's the end of conversation, but what's going on for you right now? You could notice through that answer some behaviors that have changed, which are more signs that perhaps things are not good. And then more questioning is needed. But I suppose what could help all of that is regular check-ins, like I have with my wellbeing buddy, regular check-ins. And that could be easily, I suppose, not rectified, but addressed by having a meal together 3, 4, 5 times, 6 times a week as a family. Because that's the perfect time to check in, because there's no distractions if you enforce the whakaaro of no phones at the table. Let's just talk. And I know that's very hard, because then you also have to be the example of that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jase. Really, really do appreciate that. And you're truly inspiring. And thank you for speaking from the heart. And I'm sure, you know, we'll all go away, probably take those breaths and be a bit more mindful. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Nei rā te mihi mana hau kia koutou katoa. Ko te tūmana ko kia haumaru tonu, kia ora tonu. Kia koutou katoa me tō whānau. My hope is that you stay healthy and you stay well, everyone. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you, Jase.